Hey guys, Owen here from Ghostfish Games, talking to you live on the Rated R podcast. Guys invited me here, I thought, to talk about bacon. I guess they tricked me. I'm here to talk a little bit about our game in development, Tabletop Gods.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Bamsters Rated R show. This is episode 161. And today with me, we will be doing another interview, and sitting in the hot seat with me is G-Talk.
Hey everybody. Sorry. Hi everybody. Yeah, it's me G. It's, as Drag says, 161, and we have an excellent game for you this time. And a couple of fun developers to talk to about it. Tabletop Gods, a little game where you play as a god with a tabletop, I guess, against other gods, and just pitting humans and undeads against each other. Couldn't be more fun. But first, say hi to Jim and Owen.
Hello folks. Thanks for having us.
Hey guys, thanks for having us on.
So, Jim, Owen, my note says lead designer and development director. That means you're excellently suited to tell us what is your game about.
I guess so. Yeah. I am the lead designer of Tabletop Gods. I'm also the design director of Ghostfish Studios, which is basically a department within Other Ocean Group. I guess I'll give you a little bit of just a start-up of what the game's about. In Tabletop Gods, players basically assume the roles of gods vying for power in the heavens because the elder god has mysteriously gone missing and there's a power vacuum that's happened, and everybody's basically rushing to become the most powerful god. And rather than just have this all-out war, they decide in typical kind of Ray Harryhausen Clash of the Titans godly fashion that they should actually use mortals to fight in their place. And so you basically have these tables that players stand around, and these tables are almost like windows into the world, where their unwitting mortals, their minions, are basically fighting against each other, basically within the kind of construct of this competition. And basically it's that competition that will then decide who becomes the new elder god. The aim of the game is kind of simple. If anybody's played Clash Royale, we're not ashamed to say that we we saw Clash Royale and we liked the potential for strategy and tactics within a very, very simple, kind of easy, approachable game. So basically what happens is both sides have a number of strongholds that they have to defend. You spawn your troops to basically attack the enemy strongholds. They spawn troops to defend them and to attack yours. The game's played out over 3 rounds. And at the end of those 3 rounds, whoever's destroyed most strongholds wins. Now, the game's a little bit more complicated than that because basically, at the start of each of the rounds, you have a small prepare for war phase where you can place down in secret. You can place down defenses and traps, towers. So basically, during that phase, what you're trying to do is you're trying to think, okay, I know what my player played in the last round. I know which faction he's brought to bear. I know what kind of defenses that he's been putting up. I know what I'm trying to do. I know which kind of lane I want to attack on. So basically, I will try and defend other lanes or basically set up these offensive structures to try and maximize my attack on the next round. And at the same time, your enemy's doing the same to you, but you're doing it in secret. You can't tell what they're placing. They can't tell what you're placing. It's a very short round though. It's kind of high stress. It's like 45 seconds. Once that 45 seconds ends, you're basically forced into the war phase. And in the war phase, you get to deploy units and you get to cast spells. At the start of the game, you can decide which faction you want to play. In the game currently, there are 3 factions. There's the humans, the undead, and the demons, and they all have very different troops with very different strategies, which you'll learn over time. And all the factions have access to mercenary troops, which can join your army, which you can swap out during the prepare for war phase. So one of the other kind of strategic elements of the game is figuring out how to counter what your opponent is bringing to bear, and then basically choosing mercenaries that you think will help you out best. So yeah, so the game matches are very, very quick in general. I mean, a match can extend, well, I would say almost indefinitely because we do have a sudden death phase. I'll talk about that in a second. But most matches will end within kind of 15 minutes. Each round, so like I say, each round starts with a 45-second prepare for war phase. The war phase is 3 minutes, and then we go back to prepare for war. So basically, each game is very quick. It can go to sudden death if at the end of the 3rd round, both players have destroyed an equal number of strongholds. It will go to sudden death, and the last stronghold to fall basically will decide the winner.
Okay, Jim?
Yes.
So you've now answered the next 15 minutes worth of questions.
Oh, Oh! Well, let's pretend I didn't, and you could dive into more detail. I told you, this thing just kind of just flows off the tongue, so...
Okay, so Clash Royale, but with prep phases and sudden deaths.
Yeah, so that prep phase came. So when we first started developing the game, we didn't have actually Prepare for War at all, and we talked about lots of things like the first draft of the game was actually on my dining room table, which is where I'm sat right now, and we actually kind of mocked it up using bits and bobs from board games and miniatures, and we play a lot of board games, so I've got a lot of this shit knocking around. Can I say shit?
You can.
Oh, good. We've got a lot of this stuff knocking around, and basically I kind of mocked up the game and I made some very simple rules, and we played it out to see how it would work. The resulting game is nothing like that, but it was a great place to start. Where am I going with this? Our first implementation of the game, there were very early implementations of the game which were not even worth talking about, but our first implementation of the game that looked something like the current game never had Prepare for War. And you were literally just constantly battling. And what we found is it was incredibly tiring. Our game is so action-packed and high-octane that we felt we needed a rest. And then actually the creative director at Other Ocean, Mike Micah, who you guys may have heard of, I was chatting to him and he was saying, well, why don't you consider like maybe some kind of phase where you build defenses? And we'd never really considered that. And then we started talking about Rampage, the old Atari game, where you get to kind of, you get this lull between action, you get to build walls, build defenses, and we thought that would be cool if we could marry that with the gameplay that's essentially Clash Royale. It would put a nice twist on it. And so we introduced the Prepare for War phase, and it's worked out very, very well, because each war phase is so frenetic that it is exhausting. If you play it in VR especially, I get so excited, I'm waving my arms all over the place, and and it gets very frenetic. So the nice thing about the Prepare for War phase is it allows you to kind of calm down a bit, reassess what's going on, bring new things onto the table to counter what your opponent has thrown at you in the last round. Yeah, there you go.
So it's a little bit of a rock, paper, scissors thing as well, because you see what they took out, both what faction, but also then round 2, you see what they played round 1. You can adapt your playstyle during that phase.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the only thing you really know in round 1 is what other faction you're facing. So you both get to vote on which table you want to play on. We have 3 tables, which are kind of themed alongside the factions. So you get to decide. Both players get to kind of vote on which table they want to play on. So you know which table you're playing on, and each table kind of plays differently as well because it has different routes, different paths. Unlike Clash Royale basically has the same topology, I suppose you'd say. It has the same routes depending on they just I say it's a great game, but they wrap the environment with different graphics, but it's the same routes. Our maps are all very different. So players get to decide that, and then they get to decide which faction they bring to the table, and that's told to both players before the first Prepare for War phase. So it'll slam down and say humans versus demons, so you know who your opponent is. So you've got a good idea of what troops you will face in the first round, but you don't know. There's always that wild card because they can swap out some of their troops for mercenaries, and you're never really sure what defenses and what traps they're going to place. That gets even wilder, obviously, when you go into the second round, because then they can swap out even more troops. And there is, like you said, there's a rock paper scissors thing when you get that kind of situation where you're thinking, well, he brought this in the last round, so he thinks I'm probably going to bring this to counter that, which means that he will probably bring this to counter that, and it's that whole kind of thing. It's all bluffing, double bluffing kind of thing that goes on.
I'm getting this picture of the Princess Bride movie with the two of them sitting at the table and the poison.
And the poison, yeah, it's a little bit like that, I suppose. Yeah, it can be at high levels. When players first start playing, it's not so much that. I mean, the games. You see, here's the thing. One of the reasons that we picked the Clash Royale model as well is, for starters, that's on mobile, and mobile games. Not all mobile games are simple, but action games tend to be, or at least tended to be. I don't know. I spent a few years in mobiles. Yeah, so like I said, Clash Royale, the Clash Royale model tends to be a kind of simple model, and that's why we chose it, because we wanted the game to be very approachable. Because when we started this game, we originally thought of it being in VR, because when we formed our new studio, which we'll probably talk about the team and the studio later. When we originally kind of thought about what we were going to do, we were quite interested in this. VR. I think we've got it's like the third round of VR, and this time it might stick. we kind of imagined the game in VR, but we very early realised that, well, the market's going to be very, very small. And this is a multiplayer game at heart. Yes, there are single-player modes, but it's really at heart, it's a multiplayer game. It's a very social, very multiplayer game. So we thought, well, we can't just do it in VR. We're going to have to do it on PC desktop as well. So it's been designed from the ground up to be played PC desktop and VR, and it's cross-platform again across all platforms. So if you play just on pancake mode, I think they call it nowadays, which is the affectionate word for typical traditional PC desktop play, or if you play it in VR, or we have the PlayStation VR title, also a version of the game, the SKU of the game under development right now. It will be totally cross-platform. Whatever you play this on, you will be able to play with other players in the same arenas.
Yeah, the addition of VR is that's really cool. I like that that's in there, but you're right, it is a small market. But before we get into that, I wanted to circle back around when you talked about the 3 factions with humans, undead, and demons. Were there any additional factions that you guys had considered and maybe didn't make it in, or future plans to add any additional factions at some point?
To be honest, yes. We floated ideas around for factions. The factions we've got in the game were decided a long time ago, which is strange. It was strange. We kind of stuck to them. Now, the actual troops that make up those factions, they went under a lot of iteration. But we had in mind pretty much what the playstyles of each of these factions would be, I would say, very, very early on, and we didn't really veer away from that. So the humans are, as you might guess, are kind of all-rounders. Individually, you spawn an average amount of troops on the table, and you basically got a very kind of across the board. They've got an across the board presence. They've got some ranged troops. They've got lots of melee troops. They've got high damage troops. They've got low damage troops. They're very kind of standard. The undead tend to rely on numbers. The undead, one for one, tend to be weaker than the humans. But their strength is that once you get a lot of them on the board, they can steamroll quickly. The demons, on the other hand, are very kind of high-powered individually, so you tend to have less of them on the board. But you have to kind of. And now the demons were the last faction that we introduced during early access. So we launched with the humans and the undead, and then when we introduced the demons, it kind of upset the meta to a large degree because they play very, very differently. But that was our intention. The demons, like I say, you have to probably think more about the individual placements, but you get a lot more control over it about what you deploy onto the table and when you can deploy them.
So can we expect like an angelic faction, some dwarves, some elves, like DLC?
Well, it's our intention to, in the future, yes. And we don't know yet exactly when that will be, but it's always been our intention to introduce more factions, more tables, more mercenaries. What we really want to do, though, is, at its core, Tabletop Gods feels very kind of arcade. It's very fast. It's very kind of visceral, frenetic. We want to introduce factions that people wouldn't really kind of expect. Right now, it's kind of it has fantasy trappings. Our long-term vision of Tabletop Gods wasn't actually that at all, really. We put those factions in because they're easy to understand. You say the undead to people, they kind of visually they understand what you mean when you say the undead. You say demons. Our demons are arguably not as demonic as people would imagine. When you say the humans, you imagine knights, you imagine archers. So that's what we have. But we've talked about lots of factions that are not just fantasy tropes. We've talked about the robot faction, for example. Which would be basically like wind-up mechanical robots that you can deploy onto the field. We've talked about spacemen. We've talked about cops and robbers and pirates, and that's honestly where we'd really love to go. This kind of real, kind of weird juxtaposition. If anybody's played the card game Smash Up, they do this wonderfully well, and we'd love to do something similar. So it kind of the game starts on this fantasy trope, and then rapidly veers right or left. With this. This institution of of bringing in crazy factions that you wouldn't have expected. And actually, one of the mercenaries that we've got lined up for release within a relatively short time after we leave early access it does upset the apple cart. You'll see this mercenary, you'll think, where the hell did that come from? I will just say right now that that's meant to be like a forewarning or a foreboding of what's to come. Essentially, I imagine.
Yeah, there's an RTS that does that, I thought, pretty well. That's kind of fun to play called, I think it started out as 8-Bit Armies.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've added different factions, and some of them have been fantasy based, some are more technology based, and I think one of the more recent add-ons was Aliens. So yeah, no, you can definitely do that. It's really cool, and it adds, kind of refreshes the game a little bit for folks who've been playing it a while.
Yeah, but I think you do have to be careful because you've set the precedent, and people kind of maybe, they visualize they don't know what we know as developers, so they see the game in one light. We've got to be careful the way we do it. We don't want to kind of, you've got to be careful that when you release these things, people don't go, what the hell? This game's just jumped the shark, Which if anybody realizes, Fonzie jumped the shark once apparently, so.
Well, let me ask, I when we first started, I hear two different accents. So where in the world are you guys? Are you guys actually together? Are you separated by any kind of distance?
We are not separated by any distance whatsoever. Well, we are today. I'm at home and Owen's at his home. But normally we would be in the office together, which is actually in Charlottetown, Prince Edward Island, which if nobody knows where that is, because I certainly didn't before I moved here. We're in Charlottetown, PI, which is in Atlantic Canada, which is almost as far east as you can get in Canada without getting to Newfoundland. Owen is actually a Canadian, born and bred, so he's not from too far away. He's from just across the water in New Brunswick, I believe. I'm actually English, so I'm actually from the UK, from a place called, originally Bradford, later on Leeds, but yeah, that's where I come from. And I've actually been in PI 11 years. I moved here to get away from the rat race that is the UK.
I'm actually from the east coast of Canada, so I'm actually from the province that is right beside PEI, or Prince Edward Island, like Jim was saying. Born and raised on the east coast, that sort of thing, and been working with the team here actually almost since the inception, working in the games industry and on PEI the last 12 years.
Yeah, I'll be honest, when you guys said that you were on Prince Edward Island, I was like, wait, isn't that over in the... And then, no. Completely different. Like, you guys challenged me. I've been around the planet a couple of times. That island I did not know.
No, I was going to say, it's a fairly small island. I mean, the population here is about 140,000 for the whole island. And the big industries actually here are more on the tourism side and the fisheries and farming. We're known for our potatoes, for one.
Green Gables.
Anna Green Gables. Our lobster, because we have a big fishery here for lobster.
Good food.
And then tourism. And when I say tourism, like I was saying, the population of the island is about 140,000. There's rumors that the population of the island gets to be about 1 million in the summer. Because there's so many summer homes here, a lot of tourists coming. And actually, we've become quite a destination for cruises as well.
Yeah, well, I watch the cruises. In fact, actually, I'm in my dining room now, where we prototyped Tabletop Gods, and I'm looking out of the window, and I live kind of close to the water, and I can see the cruise ships come in and out. And literally, when a cruise ship comes in, some of these cruise ships are so big, it doubles the population of Charlottetown for that day. It's madness.
Well, okay, so you mentioned Anne of Green Gables, and I have to ask, because otherwise my wife will wring my neck later. She's a huge fan of the shows. Yeah, I was never all that into them, but she has talked a little bit about going there just because she would like to see what it's like there. What kinds of things are there to do there, just day in, day out for, like, I guess, tourists or to check out? What spots should we go see if we ever go there?
For one, definitely if you're a beach person, or one, for sure, come in the summer. Don't come in the winter.
Do not come in the winter.
Do not come in the winter. So the North Shore of Prince Edward Island is pretty much one big beach. So if you're a beach person at all, that sort of thing, beautiful scenery. And then the South Coast is actually really nice because it's all red clay cliffs, that sort of thing. There's all kinds of little spots and touristy kind of fishing villages and different towns to visit for sure if you're kind of into that cultural thing. Obviously, there's the Anna Green Gables play that your wife would love to see, which is in the Confed Center here. I mean, the other thing is there's actually a really big culinary institute here as well. So a lot of restaurants you wouldn't get in smaller communities that we have, which is really cool because a lot of these chefs kind of stick around and go to like bed and breakfasts and stuff like that in the summer. and even just the local restaurants, but a lot of just kind of restaurants and little smaller restaurants around the island that are really good. I'm trying to think of everything. Yeah, if you're a golfer, there's 27 golf courses on the island. I feel like I'm working for Tourism PEI here now.
You should be, yeah. You found your true vocation.
I think so. I quit.
Yeah, well, I mean, PEI, Charlottetown is also the birthplace of Confederation for Canada. Yeah. Says the Englishman who apparently knows this. So a lot of people do come here to kind of, this is where Canada was formed, And I think the irony is, wasn't PEI like pretty much the last province to join Canada or something?
Yeah, it was kind of like the initial meeting was on Prince Edward Island, but the island didn't join till later.
Yeah, and it's really bizarre, actually, given the fact that it's not exactly the place you'd think that would house development studios, game development studios. So when I spent most of my career. So I started 26 years ago in games, long time ago, and I've been here 11 years now. And before I came here, I'd never heard of Prince Edward Island. I'd heard of Nova Scotia. And when my wife actually found me this job, she was looking. She knew I wasn't happy where I was with the travelling that I had to do. I actually loved the guys I worked with back in England, and then she said, "This is place Prince Edward Island, just north of Nova Scotia." And I was like, "I've never heard of it, but let's go for it." Literally from that day to when I arrived here, it was 3 months. I moved from England, and I've been back to England in 11 years. I've been back 3 times. So.
Well, and on that note, then, what kinds of things did you guys work on before you started creating Tabletop Gods?
Do you want to start with your list, Jim, or my list?
No, I'm not going to start with my list. It'll take us all afternoon. What I will say is that this studio that we have is a new studio, but by no means are the people that work at the studio new. So I can go back as far as my background is, like I said, and I was talking to G earlier on. I started back in like the NES days, and I worked on a whole bunch of stuff. I started at Core Design. Before I ever came to PI, I'd worked with Acclaim. Who else? Vivendi, Universal. I'd worked at a number of small studios. I'd worked on PC, consoles, blah blah blah. Anyway, that's really not the important story. The important story was when I came here. Because Other Ocean had set up just a few years before, and Other Ocean was essentially an offshoot of Foundation 9. One of the board members or owners, and I don't know, maybe Andrew would lynch me. Maybe I've got his job title wrong, but he was one of the partners in Foundation 9, and he split off from Foundation 9 and created a development studio here. Other Ocean being, because it's not Vancouver, it's not over in the west, it's over in the east, hence the name Other Ocean. And he set up Other Ocean here. Like I say, that was about 11 years ago, and that's what kind of drew me here. Well, the actual island is what drew me here. The fact that there was game development work to be done here was quite frankly kind of stunning. When I got here, though, Other Ocean was already kind of busy. They were doing. Owen can talk more towards the early days because he probably remembers more than me because I've got a terrible memory. But we've worked on so many platforms and so many games. Owen, tell us a few things that we've worked on.
Yeah, so just to come off of Jim's story, I actually started in the games industry with Other Ocean and Other Ocean Group way back in that day when the studio started. I don't know exactly what employee I was, but I think it was somewhere in the 10 to the 15th employee for Other Ocean. And at one time or another, we've been all the way up to about 150. But we're back in the smaller numbers right now, but that doesn't mean anything. Anyway, some of the titles we've worked on. So when I first started, we were working on Mortal Kombat for the DS and 10-Pin Alley for the Wii. So that was just back in the days, right when the Wii came out. But to kind of list some of our major milestones along the way, and Jim, poke me if I forget any.
Yeah.
We actually worked on the first iPhone game. So we worked on Super Monkey Ball for Sega. So one of our CTO actually was on stage with Steve Jobs back in the day when they announced the SDK for the iPhone. We've also done the port of Castlevania to Xbox Live back in the day. Done a number of edutainment kind of stuff for Leapfrog, but that kind of stuff is less game related. We worked on South Park's Tenement Revenge, which was on Xbox and PS4. we did a really cool title, and it's almost a story in itself, called Dark Void Zero, which was kind of a little bit of a kind of April Fool's kind of game that came out of nowhere, but that in itself is a story in itself. Then from there, is there any major ones along the way that I'm missing there?
We did a whole bunch of stuff. We worked with all the big publishers, Activision, so we did some Spider-Man games, we did some X-Men games. We did a whole... I mean, Other Ocean would literally do lots of different types of stuff. They were generally speaking shorter projects, but we did a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And then... No, I was just going to say nothing, just kind of more up-to-date stuff that we've been on as well. Jim and I both sort of actually... another long story in itself, but let's just say we were shortly acquired by EA to work with them for a short stint of 3 or 4 years. And we actually, between the two of us, actually worked on The Simpsons Tapped Out on mobile.
Yeah, well, also not just us, but with our CTO, so we kind of we vaguely mentioned him before, but the three of us were basically it was 3 of us, myself, Owen, and Gordon, who's our CTO, who's not on this podcast right now, but basically we left EA to kind of basically we approached Other Ocean and said, hey, can we set up a small indie studio under your label again? It's almost like coming back home. Yeah. Once the EA had acquired the staff and we'd worked on Simpsons Tapped Out and NBA Live Mobile on mobile successfully for 3 or 4 years. I can't remember exactly how long it was. But we returned essentially. We talked to Other Ocean and said, yeah, sure, we'd be interested in doing this again. And the 3 of us gracefully extracted ourselves from Electronic Arts, which is the kindest way I can say that. And we returned to work on, and our first title was Tabletop Gods, which we'd started work on. So.
And we've also actually recently done work. The studio did some work on the port of the Minecraft to 3DS. We also did the port for Rick and Morty VR to PSVR. So there's a long list of titles that we've all worked on.
It really is far too long to talk about, I think.
Well, if I may, it sounds like you've been doing a lot of contract work as a contract studio.
Yes, generally speaking. Other Ocean did. It does a lot of. It did a lot of contract stuff, but it did original IP as well, or original games. Mm-hmm. But mainly contract stuff. And now some of that stuff was with IP that already existed, and that was most of it, to be honest.
I'm mentioning it because I think a lot of gamers out there don't realize how much of the games they're playing are actually done by contract studios, as opposed to just the main studio that usually gets mentioned.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, that is the case. Yeah, publishers tend to, people tend to talk about publishers and very, unless you're a real kind of, I won't use the word fanboy, but unless you're a real, video game fan, the actual studios that work on things. It's just the way of the industry, studios, publishers need work doing. They don't often have a studio, to do that work, and they have release windows. They have stockholders that need to be pleased. They have regular release windows, and they need people to fill those. And Other Ocean did that admirably, and to some degree still does that. So.
And if I may, just the name, because when I saw it, Other Ocean Group, my thought was, is that a runoff on the old Ocean label? But I guess not.
No. Ocean was in Manchester, and a lot of the guys I used to work with back in the UK were ex-Ocean guys. No, there's actually no relation whatsoever. It's just mainly called. It's basically Other Ocean because it's on the East Coast as opposed to the West Coast. So it's the Other Ocean, as opposed to the Pacific.
I'm just old. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, me too, mate.
Ditto.
And then, as you said, Ghostfish is then basically just the studio under Other Ocean.
It is.
The one studio
Correct.
Doing the Tabletop Gods. Okay.
Yep.
Just so we get it all clear.
Okie dokie.
It does sound like we're one man short here. Gordon should have been here.
It should have been, yes. We'll castigate for that.
Yeah, we'll give him credit though, because he's back at the studio there. We're just gonna release our coming out early access version here.
Yeah, V1
next Thursday. So he's back at the studio making sure that's all put together.
Yeah, we should probably mention it. Ultimately, you guys are about to release your game. You did release early access, but now you're coming out with a, what do you call it, a 1.0 version?
Yeah, so we've been in early access, as Owen said earlier, since January. We had a lot of the game done by then. We did all the foundational stuff was pretty much done by then, but we had an aggressive roadmap, as they would probably say in the industry, of stuff we wanted to get out before we went to version 1, which was basically what we added since we launched. Was we added the Demon faction, we added a new table to play on, we added friends, leaderboards. I don't know, and you can probably remind me of things. We added new mercenaries, some new spells. We had a lot of these planned and designed. We just needed to either finish them or in some cases literally start development on them and get them done.
We definitely focused. I was just going to say we focused a lot on tightening the graphics in level 3.
Yeah, all the release notes say tightening graphics on level 3, which then people in our Discord were saying, what the hell is level 3? And it's like, and we had to post the video. I don't know if you guys have seen that video. We'll probably have to post it maybe in your Discord. It's like some old 80s video about finding a job in the games industry. It's hilarious. Anyway, we laugh, and it's got these game testers in there, and this their employer comes in and says, "Hey, have you guys finished up? Yeah, we're just tightening up the graphics on level 3. Since when did QA guys ever tighten up graphics anywhere? Anyway." So we always put that at the end of our build notes, and it's just become an ongoing meme now. It's like, we're no longer tightening up the graphics on level 3. Level 3 is now out. It's anyway, whatever.
As you can tell, we have a little bit of smart assisms to us, and you can find that in our game as well.
Ultimately, I just wanted to mention to people listening out there, we'll keep talking about all of this, but game's releasing 16th, which will be technically tomorrow. Not tomorrow when we're recording, but tomorrow when you're listening to this.
Aha. Yes, so it's already available on Steam in Early Access. It's already available on the Humble Store, and we will be going live. V1, we will be going live on Steam, the Humble Store, which basically takes you to Steam anyway, obviously. Viveport, fingers crossed, and Oculus as well, obviously, and which would be like the native VR build of our game. Obviously, when you buy the game on Steam, you get the VR game and the normal desktop PC game all in the same bundle. You don't have to decide which one you want. You just buy it and you get both.
Oh, I was just going to say, and we should also mention that when we do go live on the 16th, it will be on sale for 25% off. So everybody should know that. And then also that weekend, we'll be doing a free version as well for the weekend. So you can give it a try, come try it out, and then hopefully you'll love it just like everybody else and pick it up on sale.
Yeah, it will be free for that weekend, so you can just literally download it, play it, come and join the other nutters that play this game. Decide whether you like it. You can buy it then, obviously, like Owen said, on sale. We got, I think, is it 25% off, Owen? I think.
Yep, 25.
Yep. And that sale will extend then to the following Thursday. And during that week, we're also holding. Should I say this, Owen? Can I tell people? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, we're holding a special competition because in the game, players are kind of represented by their avatars, and their avatars are these godly masks. And in VR, you got wands as well that you kind of wave around in front of you. It's just so you can communicate with people, because the way that the game actually works is that everybody kind of comes into an arena, the table's in the middle of the arena, but people can hang around in this arena and chat to each other while the game's ongoing. That's the whole point. It's meant to be a very social activity. So you get two players battling it out and spectators hanging around just having a chat or chatting to the players, and then when the game's over they get to step up to the table and they get to play. Everybody's represented by these masks. Normally in the game you unlock masks as you level up, but we have some special masks, these leaderboard competition masks. In the first week we've got 3 new masks to unveil and to award, and basically because we have a leaderboard, and our leaderboards roll over every Sunday night, so it's a weekly leaderboard. It's not like a forever in perpetuity leaderboard. It basically wraps over every week, and at the end of that first week, whoever's in the top 100 will be awarded a special mask. If you're in the top 50, you'll get the top 100 mask plus the top 50 mask, and if you're in the top 10, you get the top. You get the top 10 mask as well. So if you finish in the top 10 in the leaderboard, you get 3 new shiny masks, and that they will be locked then until the next time we decide to hold a competition again. So
nice. Well, with a bit of luck, I think Drag and I might be there duking it out as well.
Cool. Excellent. So yeah, we're hoping that the free weekend will tempt people to have a go. The sale might tempt people to have a punt on the game. And hopefully the draw of the masks will draw people in. Our game it really lives or dies on, because it is, as I said earlier, it's primarily multiplayer. Yes, there is single player stuff. The skirmish mode is there really for you to practice against the AI, to get an idea of basically the mechanics of the game and to try things out. It's never the same as playing against a human, though. It really never is. And the trials modes in the game, the single player trials, we have different rules in the trials. So, for example, we've got one which is find and kill their king, which is not something you would normally play against another player. You have to find which of the strongholds is hiding their king, and once you manage to destroy that stronghold, you win the game. We also have orderly destruction, where you have to destroy the strongholds in a certain order, which are great challenges in single player, and they allow us to experiment with different game modes. But in the head-to-head, it's pure war mode, what we call war mode, and it's literally destroy as many strongholds as you can. And it gets really funny. We have meetups every Thursday night. Actually, we've had these meetups all the way through early access. Every Thursday night, and we have this kind of tight-knit group of players that are just constantly, it's just constant one-upmanship. 1 week it's like, clerics are overpowered, the next week is archers are overpowered, and it's just been a constant kind of roller coaster of people figuring out new strategies, new tactics, and then on Thursday night everybody gets together and we play it out, and then we award an MVP for that week. So they get a special kind of notoriety thing on Discord. And the other thing is, as well, is the thing about the leaderboards every week is if you end up the champion on the leaderboard at the end of the week, you gain the crown, and for the rest of that week your avatar wears a crown, and everybody else can see. When you come into an arena, everybody can see you and go, oh look, he's wearing the crown, he must have been last week's reigning champion. So
you mentioned the idea that it's a table where people can spectate around and then queue up and play. So a little bit, I think I used in your Discord the reference to chess, park chess, where you see people playing and then you line up and ask, can I play you with? The winner keeps the table.
Yeah. Well, he keeps the table if he wants to. He doesn't have to. He can pass it on. But the idea is that he keeps the table. So we originally imagined Owen always talks about this whole, in bars where you used to have like a pool table, and you basically everybody's lining up their quarters, and the winner stays on. And the next quarter essentially determines who the next kind of a competitor is. So basically, what happens is when you go into an arena. If you go into an empty arena, you'll get an invite immediately, and you say, do you want to play or do you want to pass? Well, you can't pass to anybody, there's nobody else there. So, but if there's say 8 people in an arena and the invites come up, and you'll always see like a queue, you'll see the actual queue there's a big kind of display board within the arena that you can look at any time, whether you're playing or whether you're spectating. You've got to imagine like you literally stood around the table, and this is true whether you're playing in VR or non-VR. It's just that just the controls are different, and there's a big table that shows you currently who scored best within the lifetime of that arena, which is different to the leaderboards. But there's also a queue showing you who's going to play next, or who's going to be invited to play next. At the end of the game, you will get an invite. The guy who won, or the girl who won, not being mean to be sexist, but the person who won basically gets an immediate invite. They can decide whether they want to play the next game. The next person on the queue gets an invite. You don't have to play. You can pass it. You can opt out of the queue altogether if all you want to do is hang out. We've had people on Thursday night, especially in the early days, where they just like to hang out. It's nice that they get to talk to people that they've met on Discord, but they don't want the pressure of playing, because sometimes you just can't be bothered. And I've done this myself. It's like sometimes I just, I don't have the energy to play. I develop the game all day long, and some nights you don't want to bother. So you just opt out of the queue, but you can still be there with people and chat away and discuss things. And you can always rejoin the queue if you want at any time. So.
Well, I do want to circle around a little bit of that with the regards to mixing the VR and the non-VR. Aside from just the social aspect of it, how much different are the two versions, and what kind of interesting things did you guys run into, or any challenges you run into trying to develop for both VR and non-VR at the same time? Yeah,
UI is a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. It really is. When you're used to, so this is Gordon's our CTO, Gordon and I had done some work on Giant Cop, which is a VR game, which didn't have a whole load of UI, but that was really my wake-up call to the problems of UI in VR. Simple little things like, as a designer, I'll write things in a design document that says, we'll display this on the top left of the screen, for example, blah, 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 blah. There is no top left of a screen in VR. There is no screen, you're inside it. And it becomes a real, quite frankly, pain in the ass as to, when you're trying to draw players' attentions to things via the usual old tricks that you would normally use in, I say tricks, the methods that you would normally use in non-VR titles. these things just fail. So we quickly realized early on, we tried for a little while to make the UI the same between both platforms. We realized we were just fighting a losing battle there. So actually, when you play on Rift or Vive or the mixed reality headsets, the Windows mixed reality headsets, and when you come to play on PSVR, when we eventually release that SKU, the interface while you play is completely different to the interface that you will play when you're playing on PC desktop. But the game is identical. It's just that the way you interact with things is... So, for example, when you're playing on Oculus, you'll hold down a button and your unit roster will appear on your hand, and you then get to point at it with the other hand and say, I want to select the knight or the archer. And then I point at the table and I say, that's where the knight or the archer is going. On PC, we have the roster displayed on a flat 2D UI across the bottom of the screen, because when you're playing on desktop, that's the quickest, most immediate way to play. In VR, the quickest, most immediate way to play is when things are kind of represented by real objects in some fashion. Now, our menus tend to be the same. We tend to use this motif of a scroll, this kind of scroll that appears in front of you, and we put all our menus on that, and that helped us a lot maintain a one-to-one relation between PC and non-VR, because in non-VR we can literally point a camera at the scroll, and in VR the scroll can just appear in front of you. But in-game, the selection of troops, the moment-to-moment, the very quick gameplay, we had to design UI differently. But the gameplay is identically. And once you put things on the table, everything is just the same. And are there any differences between gameplay? You do. One of the things we did notice is that in VR you've got a hell of a lot of awareness. Now, our tables are not massive. If any of your listeners are aware of games such as, say, Brass Tactics, which is an RTS on the Rift, which is really nice, but it's got quite a large table, in inverted commas, that you play on. Our tables are much smaller than that, because our gameplay is much faster. I'm not saying it's better, it's just different, but it's much faster, it's much more visceral and arcadey. So we confine people to a much smaller table so that everything is much more immediate. In VR, you've got a hell of a lot of awareness, so it's dead easy to see out the corner of your eye, for example, that one of your strongholds is under attack, and you can literally turn around, you can deal with that, you can spawn, you can deploy your troops to deal with it, or you can throw a mighty fireball down on those things that are attacking you. One of the issues that we faced on the desktop version is obviously that sometimes this stuff's off screen. So we had to make sure that players were aware of what was going on directly off screen. So for example, we introduced a minimap feature in the non-VR, the desktop version, which just isn't on the VR version because you just don't need it. You can see the entire table in front of you. You don't need a little minimap to show you the table because it's there. That said, a lot of our players, once you get used to the controls on non-VR, we've got like a WASD kind of move around, almost first person. It's very first person you control. Right mouse button, hold down and look around. Once you kind of grok those controls, the awareness issue is not really an issue. And most of our players actually play non-VR. It's just their choice. Even though some of them actually do have VR systems as well, they choose to play non-VR. I personally choose VR because I'm a kind of VR evangelist. I love VR. But yeah, I mean, I guess to that point, from the very offset, we were aware we needed to develop the game for VR and non-VR. We very much wanted to, and then shortly after that, we became aware that we had to create a different UI.
Well, I guess, and I'm going to follow that up with, because something like this seems like it might be prone to some fun or interesting bugs. Did you guys run into anything kind of funny, maybe behavior in the units that reacted in completely unexpected ways or anything like that?
I don't know if you call it funny. It's funny when you look at it. It's not funny for us when we have to fix them. We've had a few, yeah. We had one in particular where I can't remember the exact details. We've got a spell. What is it? Blossom. We've got this spell Blossom whereby you cast it on troops, and when the troop dies, it explodes and it does damage to nearby troops. And you can cast it on enemy troops. You can also cast it on your own, so you can essentially create like suicide bombers almost. Like, and we had this thing where we just had this cascade effect, so the game ground to a halt. It was funny to watch. We had some great videos of all these particles just exploding all over the table. And this happened on VR and non-VR. Like I said, the gameplay is identical. Most of the bugs that we get are they relate to both, apart from any user interface issues. And that took us by surprise, and it looks wonderful. And so we posted it. We posted videos of it on Discord, and all the players were saying you should keep that feature. And we were saying it's not a feature, it's a bug. Yeah, whereas normally we're more likely to turn around and say it's not a bug, it's a feature.
I think it's trying to figure out like what to attack or something.
When I was playing earlier today, one that kind of got to me. It looks a little bit buggy, but I don't know if it's intentional. I took a giant, one of those things that carries a rock, and it's really tall.
Yeah. Yeah, the giants,
put it down in the bottom of my map and just watching it slowly walk up, except it would just walk from left to right, to left to right, to left to right. I was just sat there looking at it, walking from side to side like it couldn't decide where to go.
That sounds like a bug. Yeah, I mean, what troops tend to do is they tend to... So each troop has like an engagement radius. There's complicated logic underneath, but they have an engagement radius, and once they choose a target, that's where they go. They will choose their target, and they'll wander towards that target. It could be potentially that maybe the targets it chosen were being killed, and therefore they were being killed in rapid succession. It's not behaviour you would normally see, but it could be that that's what they did. If it wasn't that, it sounds more like a bug, to be honest. And we've had... Yeah, I mean, we are literally going through bug fixing frenzy right now, and... the release that we've currently got out is a good few weeks old, and we've fixed a hell of a lot of stuff in that time. So,
yes, I took it as a bug, really, but it also I think you're right, because the word combat, it was probably kill those, no they're dead, kill those, no they're dead.
Sorry, what was that?
Can't remember what map it was. Undead map.
Yeah,
no idea what it's called.
The dark one, yeah.
Because it has like a small island at the bottom, or separate section at the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
But talking about the maps, they are very symmetrical, I've noticed.
They are, yes. So, well, that was important to us from a design point of view. We endeavoured anyway to make sure that no player has an advantage. So, actually, two of our maps are essentially flipped. Yeah, so mirrored essentially around like a central point. So, no matter which side you're on, the layout in general, even though graphically it might look a bit different, the layout, the topology is exactly the same. The Undead map actually is an exception to that rule. It's actually kind of flipped, but essentially it's exactly the same. You're dealing with exactly the same layout. It's just like a flipped version. And that's important though, because we want to make sure that there's no advantage to playing on one side of the map or the other side of the map. Now that said, because we've tried to make the both sides rather than just literally mirror it, we try to. Our map layouts are not very geometrical in the sense that they're kind of more organic shapes, with probably the exception of the human map. The human map's very regimented, which is to try and get over that theme of the human kingdom, and the fact that they're regimented. We endeavoured to make sure that there was as little to no advantage playing on one side of the table as the other, because basically when you play, you really don't know which side you're going to play on. The guy who won last, he will stay on his side of the table, and the next challenger basically goes to the other side. So you could end up on either side of the table. You've no real idea which side of the table you're going to end up on. Other than when you play single player, you always play from one side of the table. It's just the way the game works.
Then this might be a feature request. When playing, for example, the human map, and one side plays as undead, how about texturing or shading one side so it might be identical in layout, but it looks a little bit different, so you can see, it's undeads over there. I know they're undeads, but just to make the whole area look a little bit darker, a little bit more deady.
Yep, and that is not the first time we've heard that request. And it's certainly something we've discussed. I can't honestly say we've discussed it in massive detail. We have discussed it. I know, for example, Minion Masters, I think, does something similar, which is a similar kind of game. It's non-VR, and it's a Clash Royale-esque kind of game that's played like left to right as opposed to up down.
Yeah.
Yes, we've talked about it. The way that we build our tables right now doesn't make that possible in the short term, but it's definitely something that we could consider. And as I mentioned earlier, when we're experimenting with different themes for upcoming factions, we'll be wanting to do that with tables as well. And it might be that at a certain point in time we decide literally to have create tables in almost halves essentially. And that's what we do. It's just that we didn't start developing it like that, and we wanted our table to be, if you pick the undead and you're playing on the human table, it's almost like the undead are encroaching on the human table. If you play the humans in the undead level, you kind of you're throwing them into the undead level. But I can definitely understand the ask for it. Yeah.
Oh, definitely just a nice to have. Really, it's far from critical.
Yeah.
But if we're walking down the path of nice to haves. might I suggest 2v2 options? The game, I appreciate the small map, the quick gameplay. It works really well 1-to-1 from what I can tell. But 2v2, so I have somebody to shout at when things fail.
Absolutely, yeah. You got somebody to blame it.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we definitely want, like, we've talked a lot about 2v2, and we really, really want it. To be honest, I'd love to do 2v2. Also, the other consideration is we've also talked about the idea of 1v1v1, which would be kind of cool as well if you kind of pictured the circular table in 3 pie pieces, and you could almost bargain with one of the players to kind of like take the other guy out and that sort of thing. So I think all of that would be really fun, and we really want to do it. But the key here is, and I'm speaking to your audience now, is like we're here to build a community, and we really want to build a community with support of the people out there. So if the game kind of takes off, that's the kind of stuff we really want to do.
Yeah, we're aware of. These things. The 2v2 is definitely a thing we'd love to do. We've been very aware of is our player base at the moment is fairly small. We're in early access. Once the player base can get to a kind of sustainable size, it's the kind of thing we could investigate. The last thing we want to do with game modes, for example, I mentioned earlier that we've got these different game modes in single player. We could introduce those in multiplayer, and we discussed it. But what we don't want to do, because the player base is quite small right now, is we don't want to segment the player base. We want people coming to the game and being able to find a game with anybody. And if you then introduce this kind of wild card of, well, I only want to play, Orderly Destruction, or I only want to play this, then you take your player base and you split it up, and it becomes harder for them to play against each other. So that potentially, like a 1v1v1, the 3-player thing, if people were really wanting to play that becomes an issue. Obviously, and anybody who's aware of game design issues with 3 players that are all out for themselves is the kingmaker issue. That's something I don't kind of think you can avoid it, but when we're still quite a small player base and we're still quite a small game, it's kind of a luxury idea. There's so many ideas we would love to do. We just we need to have a bigger player base before they become feasible, really.
Oh, fair enough. And I guess also there's quite a lot of work involved in, like you say, 1v1v1 or 2v2. That's deviates a lot from what you have now.
It does, yeah. We have technical limits, obviously, and bandwidth limits. Obviously, you're playing online. You've got a lot of troops on the table. When you have 3 players, what do? You just add another third to that number. There are technical requirements that players kind of don't really want to know about. They just think the devs will sort this out, but it's a very real issue that devs have to sort out. So we would then probably have to kind of scale back the amount of troops that people could deploy at the table, so we could keep frame rates up. It does add challenges, but it's the kind of stuff that we really seriously want to do. We would love to do this. We've even talked about this is far in the future, like multiple tables within the same room. So I talked about the pool table analogy early on. Of when you go to these pool halls and there's multiple pool tables, can you imagine there being multiple tables of Tabletop Gods, and you can literally wander around and kind of literally put your credit on one table, say I want to play next. That's our long-term dream, but yeah, that kind of shit keeps us up at nights.
Really quickly, because you mentioned PSVR all of a sudden in the middle of everything. That means you're coming for PlayStation.
We are. And the game is currently. We are currently porting it over to PlayStation VR. It's not without its challenges. The PlayStation doesn't have the same grunt power as a PC, so it is challenging. But we're making good progress. We don't have a confirmed date yet, but we are moving. We're getting there. But yes, it is challenging. It's just the style of game we're doing. There's lots of troops on the table. There can be, it's lots of things that normally, if you were going to really kind of pitch a game out on PSVR, you wouldn't do, because you'd have more common sense than we do. But we just love the idea of it on PlayStation VR, because there's a huge player base there. A lot of our guys at work have PlayStation VR. That's their VR platform of choice that they play on. And we just want to kind of bring. The idea is we want to bring players from every from every platform together. You know, at one point we even discussed, well, we could change the game somewhat on PlayStation VR to make to reduce technical challenges. You know, but then it would skew it, it would shard it essentially, and only PlayStation players could play against PlayStation players, and we don't want that. We want players to play against everybody, regardless of platform. So yeah, stay tuned. We're making good progress on it, but we're not ready yet to say when it's going to release on PlayStation. And
PlayStation includes non-VR controller based?
Currently not. It's actually PlayStation VR only. Although, that being said, yes, it's something we would be very interested in doing. The control issue, the control challenges really raise their head there. If you were going to do non-VR, like you just talk about TV play, yeah, as opposed to VR?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we again, it's something we have discussed. It's just finding time to investigate what the controls would possibly be like for such a thing. Because obviously, when we play flat screen on PC, we've got mouse and keyboard, and the mouse is pretty much the perfect pointing device for a 2D interface. On the PlayStation, you've got a DualShock. So we've discussed lots of things. We've discussed using the tilt controls to essentially move the cursor around and keeping most of the controls the same, so you can orbit around a table and point by tilting. We've discussed lots of things like, splitting the table up into grids and essentially snapping around in a grid kind of manner. A lot of these things, I mean, that's my least favorite. We have some hope that we could do maybe like a fishing rod kind of control by tilting and pointing the cursor around. But to be quite honest, it's stuff that we've not really investigated yet, but we're very keen to.
And just in case anybody is thinking, well, the PlayStation can do mouse keyboard. Yeah, but Sony requires DualShock 4 support, even if...
Of course it does.
Yeah, it's a requirement. It's not even optional. So mouse keyboard, awesome, but controllers required.
Yeah, and even if Sony would allow it to be just mouse keyboard, most players don't play mouse keyboard, and therefore your market becomes tiny. And therefore, from a purely business point of view, we've poured a lot of effort into a small player base, which is, VR is... Well, it wouldn't be VR then, obviously, but yeah, I mean, how many people just play games on a PlayStation with just mouse and keyboard? I don't have those numbers, but I would guess it's not many. So,
well, before we get to our last question, well, I've got one more, and that is from sitting and playing the game myself. It's kind of got elements of different types of game. You got a little bit of almost like a MOBA. You've got some tower defense elements, some RTS elements in there. So if you were going to give a kind of a sum up quick elevator pitch to someone to explain the game, what would that be?
I hate these things because I'm far too verbose for elevator pitches. But it's basically, and it would rely on anybody actually knowing these games that I'm going to talk about. But it would be tower defense meets Clash Royale. So yeah, it's basically an RTS light,
a mashup of RTS, arcade action.
Yeah.
And there's a third one in there somewhere. Tower defense, yeah.
Yeah.
That's really
elevator pitch ever.
Yeah. It's actually one of those things that actually even a challenge from the marketing point of view is like a lot of people will pigeonhole you into, oh, you're not real-time strategy, you're not tower defense. And that's where we find ourselves, because I think we took a mash of a few different game genres and put them into one, and now we have a hard time defining it and making other people understand it. So
yeah, we were just dumb. We should have done that.
No, that's actually kind of the cool thing about a lot of games that have been developed recently is that they're blurring those lines a lot. It used to be things fell into one category or another. It was either a 2D platformer, an FPS, RTS, whatever.
Yeah.
But now a lot of these lines are being blurred, and so it's kind of cool that you're getting to kind of mix things up like that.
Yeah, and it does make it hard to describe these games. I can appreciate. So yeah, doesn't really help. But yeah, I mean, that's categorization. It's a problem. Yeah.
So are we ready to get to our, as Bam likes to call it, our penultimate question, G?
Uh-oh.
So the last question we like to ask folks, every guest on the podcast, and get their input is basically, what kind of bacon do you like? How do you like it prepared? And what kind of beverage would you pair with said bacon, be it, beer, alcohol, or non-alcoholic is your choice?
This is a question I can appreciate. All right, so I'm going to take it first because Jim's probably just going to say like some Parmeal bacon or something. I actually own a smoker, so I do a lot of like bacon, and I've done it before. but I like to take a pork belly, which, your bacon, cut it up in chunks and make what they call burn ends with it. So I smoke it for about 3 hours, and then baste it for another hour and a half in applesauce, and then some barbecue sauce after that. So that's my favorite bacon. And I like to pair that with a nice craft brew. I generally have been into sours lately. So I've been drinking a lot of craft brewery sours. So that's my pairing there. I'll hand it over to Jim.
Yeah, I'm going to disappoint you by saying I've been a vegetarian for the last 8 months. So I won't be eating bacon. I won't be eating bacon at all. So what I'll do is I'll forego the bacon and eat some delicious lettuce. Yeah. But what I will drink is a fine scotch. My favourite scotch is probably Lafroig, and that's what I'd be drinking. So, yeah, screw the food. I'll just go straight to the whiskey.
I'll join you on the Lafroig, definitely.
Woohoo!
Can I say, just for good measure, there is vegetarian bacon?
I've tried some stuff. Now, this is a long time ago. And I wasn't that impressed. There's actually a movement now with a lot of these protein-based, vegetable protein-based meat substitutes, and there's some really good stuff. I'm in no way affiliated with A&W Burgers, but they have this. They sell Beyond Meat burgers, which is Beyond Meat is a separate company. It's an American company, as far as I'm aware. But my God, these things could fool. They could fool you. They're very, very good. So I'm quite pleased. Now, I became a vegetarian not because I don't like meat. I love meat, and it kills me that I've given up. But I'm not going to go into my political leanings. But it's been challenging. Let's put it that way. I love bacon. I love eating pigs. It's lovely. I've just decided not to anymore.
Fair enough. Just the one I'm thinking of when saying vegetarian bacon. There's a seaweed product, at least we can get here in Belgium, that for some reason comes out like bacon. I have no idea what's in, what that seaweed thought when it was growing itself. It's going, I want to be a pig. But it works.
I want to be a pig. I'm a sea pig. Yeah, that sounds amazing. If I could get that would be awesome. It's like I used to eat back in England. I tried vegetarianism before my first son was born, which is 18 years ago now. And I lasted for 6 months because it was difficult. And then my wife got pregnant with our second son, and we just thought, nah, we can't do this while she's pregnant. But you could get Quorn in England, which is like I think it's a mushroom protein kind of based thing. And the Quorn was pretty good. You can't get Quorn in Canada. It's not been passed for some weird reasons. Like health and safety in Canada is like, it's nowhere near as kind of stringent as health and safety in Europe, but for some reason, Quorn, no, you're not allowed to eat that. I don't know. Maybe it's the beef lobby or something in Canada. I don't know.
I want to circle back to the barbecue and applesauce. That sounds really good.
Yeah, you walked right into somebody that appreciates his bacon. Let's put it that way.
Owen is forever posting pictures of his stuff on Facebook or Instagram or something. There's always some almost just ridiculously delicious looking crackling of something, and it just makes me want to kill him, quite frankly, because lettuce just doesn't stand up.
Now I want to know how I can order a package of that to try it out.
He will be able to tell you.
Yeah. No, you mean to just try it? Like, do you barbecue, or do you have a smoker or anything?
No, I don't. I meant order a package from you.
Oh, yeah. $500,000. Let's do it.
You found your true vocation, Owen. Go to
it. I've been debating a side business of a food truck with another guy. I know a friend that's a chef, and he keeps bugging me about it, but we'll see.
Well, Owen, I think you might just have added yourself to the tourism trip that Drac wants to do.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, anytime, actually. If you guys are thinking about it, come visit us at the studio or look us up. We're pretty friendly folks, so wouldn't mind. We could point you around or take you for a tour or whatever.
I will definitely keep that in mind, because I know my wife does want to make a trip out there at some point. So when we make it over there, I'll give you an early notice so that I can try some of that bacon.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Get you some bacon and a little brisket.
And we can take you around to all the best pubs.
Yeah. Maybe even get...
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Get you a couple of lobster or something, too.
Yeah.
Bacon wrapped lobster?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's the thing.
Now we're talking.
Okay, that one has me confused. I can't figure out if that's good or bad.
Oh, it would be good. Lobster, bacon, how can you go wrong? Really?
Exactly. Is it bacon with anything good? I thought that was the rules.
Bacon wrapped in bacon is good too. So
bacon custard. Yeah, that's good too.
Well, Drac tried some, was it bacon beer, bacon cider thing? That didn't go well.
Well, it went okay, but yeah, it's not something I would do again. I've started brewing my own cider. That's something I've always wanted to learn.
Yeah.
And I took one of the bottles and decided to infuse it with bacon. So I took some thick cut bacon, I cut it into thin strips, grilled it up, and put it in the bottle for a week just to try and give it a bacon flavor. And it came out more like drinking bacon grease. Apple flavored bacon grease more. So.
Shush, you're making me hungry.
Side effects of coming on this podcast? Hungry.
Yeah. Jim gives up his vegetarianism in the space of 1 hour. Gee, thanks, guys. Thanks.
Whoops. Gentlemen, it's coming up. We're well past the hour, actually. I just noticed, wow. Well, time is fun when you're having flies.
Indeed.
It's been excellent having you on. Even the whole, as I said, the Prince Edward Island tourist board thing, good to hear.
Yeah. Well, we get paid for that, so I'm glad you enjoyed it.
We played your game. It's an excellent game. It's fun. I only played it single player. I want to play it, and that will be this weekend. You might actually find it online. We'll be playing...
Yeah, I do, yeah.
For people who are listening, that was last weekend, but we'll be playing again next weekend when it is the free-to-play after it's released tomorrow, as this episode releases on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
There is a discount, as you heard. Go get it, or at least try it in the open play weekend. I think this one is not a game that you're going to spend 20 hours a day playing, like some people do in some games. Hi, Battlefield. But it's one of those you can pick up and play with your mates, or you can just... There's a Discord, go over, ask if anybody want to play. I will say it needs to come to Mac, so it's easier for me to play, so I don't have to go over to the PC. But that's separate. Or, PlayStation once you figure out the controls. But it's definitely going to stay on my computer because I like this kind of game. I normally don't, but this one, yeah, it works well. The prep phase, the whole setup, the tower defense. I love tower defense for some reason. This works for me.
Well, that's nice to hear. Thanks very much.
And visually, the style is fun, and I'm just hoping either you're adding like a Moleman faction in the future or perhaps some weird aliens, just for the hell of it.
Oh, yeah. There's no shortage of stupid ideas for factions, and we like stupid, so...
Aberrations with beholders.
Yeah, the beholder faction would be cool. Red beholder, green beholder, blue beholder, be nice and cheap.
Oh god, a beholder that is a melee beholder that just punches with one of its eye stalks. That would be fun. Do that, please.
Maybe it's a mercenary.
No, I just want a mercenary that's bacon and spits oil at people.
You might be surprised at how many folks we've either tried to or in a few cases been successful in adding bacon to their games.
Hey, never say never.
we do have pigs in the game, so we're already halfway there.
We are there actually, and they get fried.
On the demon level, we have pigs, and one of our big. We also have chickens as well. So one of the things is if you drop the fireball, which is one of our big spells, the major spells. If you drop the fireball, it basically wipes out everything in the area. And if you drop it on like the chickens, and then when it all clears, there's just like a fried chicken left. I think I don't think we do that with the pigs, but I think the pigs mutate. The normal pigs then become demon pigs in the demon level, if I remember correctly. But anyway.
All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. Thank you for letting us check out the game. For the folks listening on the podcast, we appreciate it. And those watching on YouTube or Facebook, you'll get a chance to see some of the gameplay in the background while you listen to this. So definitely go check it out. We'll make sure there are links in the description below for all of the places. Guys, thank you very much.
Thanks for having us. It's been good fun.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun talking to you guys, and thanks for having us.
Oh no, thank you for being excellent guests that did all the talking. Sorry.
It's too much talking.